Welcome to lesson number 3 and our focus on ions. Our lesson objective: determine the number of protons, neutrons, and electrons in an ion. Ions are charged particles, and they are formed when a neutral atom is either gaining or losing electrons to form these charged particles. So if you're a neutral atom and you lose electrons, that means you're losing negative charges. So you become more positive and you form a cation. If you're a neutral atom and you gain electrons, that means you're gaining negative charges, and therefore overall you have more negative charges, so you form a negative anion. So there are two types, as I mentioned, the cat and the anion. The cation is when the atom loses an electron or electrons to become positively charged. This is known as oxidation. So here's an example here. Here is the neutral sodium atom. It's an atom, so we know that the number of protons equals the number of electrons. You see at 11 positive charges and 11 negative charges. Now, if we lose one electron here, that means we only have 10 negative charges, but we still have 11 positive charges. So overall, we have one extra positive charge, which is indicated as the charge of the ion. So it's Na plus or Na plus 1. Notice that the number of protons cannot change. That identifies the substance. That makes it sodium in this example. An anion is when the atom gains an electron or electrons and becomes negatively charged. This is known as reduction. So let's look at the chloride ion formation. So here's the chlorine atom. Again, atoms are electrically neutral, so the positives equal the negative. So 17 protons, 17 electrons. Now if we gain an electron, we now have 18 electrons, so 18 negative charges, but only 17 positive charges. So overall, we have one extra negative charge, indicated by the -1 for our ion symbol. So let's look at an example. At the top here, I put the iron atom, which is electrically neutral, and from the periodic table, I filled out all the information that we can get about iron. Now let's look what happens when we form the cation, or Fe plus 3. So the atomic number is going to stay the same, because that is how we identify that it's iron. The mass number stays the same because when we, in this case, either gain or lose electrons, electrons have essentially no mass. So it's so insignificant, it's not going to affect the mass number, because that's protons plus neutrons. The number of protons is not going to change. That's 26, because the atomic number is the number of protons. The number of neutrons doesn't change because we said mass doesn't change, so that's still 30. So what does change when you form an ion? The number of electrons. So we have 26 electrons in the neutral atom iron. Now the plus 3 is going to indicate that we've lost 3 negative charges, because again, we can't change the proton number. It doesn't mean that we add 3 protons. It means we have 3 less electrons, which would be 23. So when you compare protons to electrons, we have 26 positive charges from the 26 protons, and we're going to have 23 negative charges from the 23 electrons, and when you add those together, we have an overall positive 3, which is indicated on the ion symbol. Let's see one more example. Again, at the top, I have the neutral atom. In this case, it's bromine. And then I have the ion, which is the bromide ion. In this case, it's an anion. It's negative. So again, the atomic number will not change. Neither will the mass number. Neither will the number of protons, because we know it's Br. Neutrons does not change because mass doesn't change. So we know it's only the electrons that are changing in an ion. In this case, -1 means we have one extra negative charge. We've added one extra electron. So instead of 35, we have 36. And so we look at the number of protons, which is 35 positive charges, and the number of electrons, which is going to be 36 negative charges. Overall, we have one extra negative charge, which is indicated on the ion symbol. Let's check your understanding. Can you determine the number of protons, neutrons, and electrons in an ion? At this point, you should be able to determine the number of protons, neutrons, and electrons in an ion.